Hi, everyone. This is Jessica of Northern Atlas, and I wanted to take you on a little tour of a coaching session with me. And when I say coaching session, I do mean astrology session. I call them celestial coaching sessions. Um, if you are interested in learning where that name came from, happy to tell you. Um, in the meantime, I just want to show you what it looks like when you book a session with me and what kind of energy you can expect to kind of drop into and how I sort of run these. So these are 90-minute sessions, and I've been doing them for a few years now. And it's really lovely. I really enjoy providing this service, and it feels really enriching when I work with other astrologers and not only see how they do things, but see how they can witness and view my chart in ways that I don't feel that I can. Um, and just having that like additional perspective on the chart that I am most familiar with is my own, and having someone else look at that and bring up things that I might have never noticed on my own. So I do find both the receiving and giving of astrology chart readings to be just an amazing experience on both sides. And it's something that I do offer as a personalized service. So this is like a consultation, is the sort of category that I define it for my business. And it is something that I I'm really enjoying, and I want to like advertise really enjoying it. And I also understand that you're not necessarily watching a tour guide to be like, oh, does this work for Jessica? Like, presumably, if I'm doing it, it works for me. But the feedback has been that it's been a really great fit for other people as well. So yeah, I'm very happy to guide you through this tour. Okay. So this is where your info would be right from the jump. I like to have this visual. I love slide decks and I love having this visual for people because we are talking about 3D concepts and, putting them onto two-dimensional screens or piece of paper, or we're drawing them. And it's a complex number of categories and ideas and thoughts that are all kind of happening and coming together when you have an astrology reading and when you look at your chart. And I find the more eyes on it, the more it's like, this living piece of art kind of thing. Um, so this is where we land. And then I bring people into our agenda. And there's really like three main components. So at the start, again, this is a 90-minute session. So at the start, we're checking in because often people, I feel like this happens to everybody who has some sort of intake form, that even if they just wrote it the night before, by the time you sit down and have a session, it's like, okay, what's going on for you right now is typically how I like to phrase the check-in question. And people will be like, for the most part, people will be like, okay, ignore what I said, or like, I don't remember what I said. These are the things I want to work on now. So it is this very like live, real time atmosphere. And we're not looking to, address maybe how you were feeling 2 months ago when you initially filled out the form. unless that's pervasive and it's still a part of your consciousness and your patterns that you're trying to look at more clearly. And then the check-in, I'm guessing, takes us about the first like 10 to 15 minutes because we want to catch everything. And the reason that I think that it's worth that 10 minutes is there's a lot of information that's going to be coming to you. And so the more information we have together, the better we're able to see where stories and themes and patterns are coming up. Because if you have had 2 minutes to tell me what's been going what's been going on, or what's up with you, if you only had 2 minutes to do that, how would you be able to demonstrate or observe yourself? Oh, these are the biggest sort of themes for me. Whereas if we're talking about like, oh, this happened 2 months ago, but now I'm dealing with this other thing. And if the themes are kind of rising up, they can better inform what we might be looking at, or what we might be able to learn and adjust and attune to when we have the session. So I think it is really helpful to have that like 10 minutes at the start to be like landing, how are you, etc. Like, let's move into a check-in. And then like at that point, it's sort of like the roles get a bit clearer defined. So we've moved from like, hello, nice to see you, other human being. We then move into these sort of adopted roles of like, you're the client, we're looking at your chart, you're on display. And just being comfortable with that. And maybe even it's being comfortable with the language required to say whether you're comfortable or not, right? Like, especially if we don't know each other, or we don't know each other very well, if we've never spent like real time talking, something that I have always loved to do, is like delivering voice notes to people. And I rarely talk on the phone in real time anymore. And anyway, it is a different process, at least for me. My lived experience is like spending time one-on-one is this really like magical thing. It's not an archived artifact like a voice note. It's like, it's this fleeting thing. We do record these sessions, but we don't know what's going to happen in that time. So I definitely endeavor to use this space also to, and by this space, I mean the check-in, use the check-in space to let that trust unravel. I don't think that it's in anyone's best interest to like rush the like intuitive responses that we have to people. So that's why I think the check-in is important. It creates context. It allows us to easily drop into the roles that we're inhabiting in this time together. And recognizing that the bulk of what is being purchased, like the bulk of the service that is being offered, is the presence. Like, no matter what happens in the next 90 minutes, like, I'm here for you. And I'm here to not just inform you or educate you about what your chart might look like, but to hold you in reverence and respect and dignity while you are processing potentially new information or new perspectives about your own life and your own experiences. And like, any sort of storytelling that has been going on, there's always room for resonance in a reading, and there's always room for like adjustment, response, because I like alliteration. So yeah, that's the check-in. Um, I think I'll wrap that thread up. And then we have the reading itself. So the reading itself is where we're going to be looking in the next few slides. I'm going to show you just the template that I created and that I use for myself and for my clients. It's morphed over the years. And I really like how it's laid out now. This is like the freshest one. I think I've only had 2 readings with this style. So, but I love it. And I hope that everyone loves it too. So you can take a quick peek. And then we'll talk about takeaways. So this idea that like, okay, I'm not willing to just equip you with knowledge and then be like, off you go, goodbye. Like I want to see where your creativity can be accelerated or engaged, enacted in some way because of our discussion. So we'll talk about takeaways in terms of like, I will often have intuitive suggestions for people that are much like a remediation. So if somebody is saying that, or something we're discovering in somebody's reading is, like, how can you connect in a clearer way with Jupiter? And I might be called to suggest, you could read the Orphic hymn to Zeus, Jove, Jupiter. And that is not like prescriptive action. That's not something that I feel like, oh, you've got to do this. Like, this is the natural next step. It's really more about like, here are some suggested tools, and there's no inherent meaning behind any of them. It's not like, here's the best suggestion and you should pick this one, and here's like a not so helpful suggestion. They're just little tools to add to your toolkit. So that's the agenda. Takes 2 seconds to talk about the agenda when you're not on a tour. So then check-in. This is just the background for the check-in page, or rather the check-in time, which, as I said, it's about 10 to 15 minutes, however long it needs to be. It doesn't need to start or end at any particular time. And then the astrology reading. So again, every single page is just going to reiterate like we're on the right person. We're talking to and about you. And this will reflect your information. Got cocky there. So this is where I take over for a little bit and I become a bit of a lecturer. And I give a little spiel about how when we look at our chart, it's really important that we understand the different roles that every symbol and number are assigned. So how I like to break it down is how I learned it from a book that I can reference. And I think I've seen this reiterated, but I just found it very helpful because I often think of astrology charts as maps, hence Northern Atlas. So the spiel essentially is, okay, we can divide into like 4 categories, and we can break this map down if we were to like turn the map into a play, because we didn't have enough analogies going on. The planets are the energy, and so this is like the characters of the play. So this is what energy is present. Each planet has a job to do, and we're going to be covering the first 7 planets. Then there's signs. This is like the environment, kind of like the setting or backdrop of a scene within the play. Where are people when they are talking to one another or when they are experiencing some action or dialogue? So this is also informing like how a planet has to achieve their goals, get their jobs done. They have to be able to get that done in the setting that they are assigned. Then we have houses. So these are areas of life. This is very much the like what happens when you pull like a 3D space into a two-dimensional piece of paper or screen. This is like, how does it physically manifest these energies? So we could look at this as like the external motivating factors of the characters. So there's very specific areas of life that get divvied up into 12 like categories. And sometimes you look at them and you're like, oh, this place is like packed. There is no room to move. Sometimes they're all really lined up and you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. And other times you're like, this is the junk drawer. Like, why do we have a junk drawer? And other times it's like, oh, there's only two things in here. So it is just as odd as life is itself, I guess. And yes, this is the like external motivating factor of the planets. Then we have aspects. This is like the relationships. So the planets witness one another in different ways. They can see one another and have that sight, that awareness be really beneficial, really powerful. And in other cases, it's a different experience. So they can be friends or foes. So this would be like plot points. So the characters all exist, but the story doesn't really move until there are plot points between them. So the plot point can be that the main character, your chart ruler, goes to your son's house, which is, of course, the celestial sun. Okay, so that's the overview that I give. Then we dive into the ascendant and the ruler, talk about how the ascendant is like the sign. So this is the point that acts as our like purpose in life. And a way that I really loved it, an analogy that I really loved, was recently explained to me is that you can look at it like the lenses that we wear to see and to be seen. So I love this analogy because I have really beautiful sunglasses. And so like I am seeing the world, it's kind of like a purplish shade. And then so I'm seeing the world that way. And then I could just go get it, but the frames have this like beautiful turquoise, sort of like minty teal accent, which is like my personal favorite color. So it's sort of like people view me and I view people and life through this ascendant point and through the sign. And then whoever is the ruler of that sign is your chart ruler, which is a really cool feature, a real cool. I really try not to use the word aspect when I'm talking high level about astrology. But yeah, the chart ruler is a very interesting and essential point, key theme, anchoring point, maybe. Anyway, moving on. Then we'll look at the sun, the moon, and the phase of the moon that you were born under. So sun people are very familiar with. My favorite analogy or sort of title for what our sun does was by Michael J. Morris, who was saying that the sun is our like personal North Star. And it was just so nice to hear that rather than, terms like ego and um, consciousness. Like it totally is our consciousness, but yeah, it's so nice to hear it in that way. So we can be as poetic as we want to be. That's one of the beauties. Um, the moon. The moon is like, I always go to emotions, like mood, right away. But it is also how we like mother ourselves and mother others, and the the ability to nurture, like how we're going to do that based on the sign that it's in. And then the way that Kelsey Rose explained moon phase was mood lighting, which I love. I love that analogy. So this is just pointing to the part of the lunation cycle that you were born under. And there's 8 distinct phases. Then, speaking of the moon, the lunar nodes, so North Node and South Node, the idea of karmic increase and release. So, this is really nice, especially if you either fully know and believe in like multiple lifetimes, um, or if you have any interest and curiosity in this possibility that you've lived before. um, I studied reincarnation when I was really young. I was like 12 for a speech competition that we were doing at school, and it was so cool. So I mean, I think it's a really great concept, even just from a creative standpoint. It's not something that I think you have to like subscribe your life to in order to benefit from the discussion. But it is really nice to just be like, okay, like if this were a character, if this were a story that I was telling to somebody and it happened to be about me, and there was a past life that I lived, what might that have looked like, and what might I have been really good at because I'm just so natural at them now. So we talk about the North Node and the South Node, the lessons that we either have to learn in this lifetime or the ones that we've already mastered and we're able to start loosening the grips of like dependence on, if you so choose. And then there's the angles. So the descendant, I think, and I am a Libra rising, but the descendant is something that I think should be given. I think we should be looking at our charts in terms of the axis. So, like divisions of 6 at most, rather than divisions of 12. Like we can't make a circle without those oppositions. We would make a different shape. And there's something valuable in the shape of the circle. So, and there's something welcoming in the shape of the circle. So I do think that as time goes on, I'd like to start to identify the descendant more thoroughly and like more prominently in people's charts. Just because I think we should have like the ascendant and the descendant as one discussion, have the IC and the MC as one discussion, and then parse out from there. That's my opinion, man. So anyway, our descendant is like our other half. So this idea, and I often like to reference this mythology, but this idea that the ancient Greeks had about how humans were formed, and it was that we were this two-faced, four-armed, four-legged body that the gods, due to anger, I think, split in half. And so there would be this sort of romantic myth about finding your other half. And I think that this narrative has been co-opted. I think this narrative has really been forced into like a romantic monogamous context, and I don't really believe that that's what we're talking about. I think it's like the archetype of the self and the other, and like who is your mirror, because all of our senses face outward. So I look out and I don't see myself. And when I hear things, we all hear our own voices differently than other people hear them. um, and that's because we emit the um, the sounds that we make and then have to hear them again. And other people don't have that. So yeah, I'm really blowing your minds. um, so yes, who can mirror us, and what are those qualities that we could be, but are so firmly rooted on one end of the spectrum versus the other. So that's the descendant. And then the IC and the MC. The IC is our like felt sense of refuge and tradition. Our MC is our most public self. And this is like the part of our chart that is most recognizable to others, whereas the IC is often called the basement, the umbilical cord, which Taylor Ursula called it in a workshop recently, and I loved, and the inner child. So this is like that part of us, like that part of internality, the internal part of us that is shielded. It's not necessarily meant to be on display unless you're me and your sun is on your IC. Then we look at Luna, we pull up the chart, and I do this because I really like to get people to feel comfortable like asking questions. I want people to feel like they can see the symbols and they can be witnessed in saying like, oh, I don't really know what all of this means, or like how to ask a question about this. And it's like that's okay. Like let's have it so that you can watch me as I'm moving through the like the question that you have, or something that we talked about, in the check-in, and seeing it displayed visually. I really think that it is beneficial to see someone interpreting your chart. And if you're so inclined, like watching me process your chart with the new information, because I can look at your chart and then look at your intake form, and I can start to piece together some possible stories that, maybe we're going to cover, maybe we're going to come up. And then I actually hear what they are when we're together, and I can just provide so much more information and context in many cases. So that's why I like to show Luna. And then this is typically, this is like the takeaway part. So this is where it's like, okay, what do you feel called to do to further anchor into what we talked about, what you've learned, what we've discussed, whatever feels kind of new or enticing about your chart. And this is definitely like a coaching technique. And this is something that I think just adds to the creative energy. So I really like to leave people with prompts. So suggestions, prompts, these are not things that you have to do right away or that you have to do when the recording is available or whatever. Just something to consider and to sort of be there for you when you're ready. So that is the end. So that takes 90 minutes. I'm pretty sure I took 10 hours to explain it. But if you have any other questions, please do let me know. And in the meantime, there's going to be some examples available for you, and you'll be able to see how I might do a reading for a celebrity guest. So thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in your reading very soon. Bye.